Hello and welcome back. So today we are going to take a look at effects in Figma. Okay. So let's go ahead and create a new page. So I'm just going to click on this plus sign to create a new page, and on this new page I'm just going to call it effects. So I want to make sure the page is under the explore page. So if it is not under, all you can do is to click, hold, drag. You can see right now it's under the components page. So what you want to do is to click, hold, drag, and make sure it is under the explore page, so that when you're going through the documents, we are able to know exactly what you're doing. So the first thing we want to take a look at today is field transparency. So normally once you type, so I'm just going to draw a frame here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a frame here. Now on this frame, let's just go ahead and give it one of our main color. Let's go ahead and give it the blue, or you can just play around with any color you want, but let's assume we have this. Okay, I'm going to draw in some shapes. Let me draw in this rectangle, and let me go ahead and give this a color, and let's go ahead and choose this color. I'm just picking any color for now. Okay, and let's go ahead and maybe give it just a border radius there. Already you know what that is, so let's go ahead and make that 40. Now when I talk about transparency, if you want to apply a transparency to this shape right now, okay, if you want it to be a little bit transparent, all you can do right here where you have 100%, you can use it to control the transparency. So if I should come in here and type in 50, now you can see we have this see-through effect right on this shape. You can actually see that it is transparent. Okay, you can see through it. It's interacting with the background color, right? So you can actually do 2%, depending on what you want, 5%, 10%, any amount you want. Let's go ahead and use 10 there, and let's make this white and see what's going on. Now you can see we've added transparency right on this shape. So if you want to add the transparency to your shape, you basically have to come in here where you have this percentage, and then increase or decrease the transparency. There are a lot of times whereby you need to do this, right? So that's what you want to do for the fill. Now right here you have the layer transparency. It's actually different from the fill transparency. Okay, so if I should take this back to 100, okay, and I come here, this particular one controls the layer. Okay, so let me go to this particular one here controls this layer. So if you have a lot of things on this layer, let's say you have something on this layer like this rectangle right now on this layer, if you use this transparency right here, it's going to affect that particular layer, not just the color. But if what you are looking for is to just make the color a little bit transparent, then you want to come under fill and use this transparency here. You can find it right here or right here where you have the color, right? So in case you choose a color, you can actually put in the percentage here, or you can use this slider to slide it to control the transparency. So basically that's transparency. And the next thing now, the next effect we are going to look at, so let me just make the transparency right there to be 50. Okay, let me reduce this. So that's for fill transparency, and also you can use the layer panel transparency. Let me take this to 16. Okay, now the next one, let me bring in, and let me just take the same shape, let me duplicate it and make them 2. Okay, let me drop this here, and you can see the effect transparency can give you. You can see because they are transparent, you can actually see the effect is creating right there. Okay, but now we want to move over to the next one, which is basically blending mode. So let me select everything back to 100, and let's see here. Let's go ahead and give it a color. Let's just choose a color, a random color there, and let's go ahead and make this one this color. Now blending mode is basically how the layer on top interacts with the layer under. Okay, so you can use blending mode to choose how layers interact with other layers. So right here you have 2 types of blending mode. You can also use the layer blending mode, which we have right here, or you can use the color blending mode. Remember, if you are working with colors, you want to use the color blending mode, right? Where can you find the color blending mode? If you click right here, you are going to see this little dot here. So this is the blend mode. So you can go ahead and click that blend mode and choose different blending mode. And you can see as I'm moving across them, you can see the different effects I'm able to create. So this is how you create a blending mode effect in Figma. In a later class, we're going to see practical use of these things. That's the use case for them, right? So that is it for the blending mode. So the blending mode and the transparency is very important. Okay, I'm just going to delete this. Okay, let me leave it here. I'm just going to select these two and then just drop them here so we can see what we've been working on. So the first thing we took a look at today is the transparency here, the the fill transparency. So we said you can actually give it a fill transparency, or you can use the layer transparency, but most of the time you want to use this fill transparency. Okay, and also another use case for this fill transparency, just before we move on, let's assume I have like a picture right here. So let me get a picture. Okay, let me get a picture right here. To get a picture, all you need to do is to download the picture and drag it into Figma, or you can use a plugin. So let's go to file, then under plugin you want to go to manage plugin. Let's search for Unsplash. You can use Unsplash, you can use Pixabay, you can also use FreePic. So let's go ahead and run Unsplash. So I'm just going to get a picture. So it's loading. Now I have Unsplash right here, and if you want to add a picture using Unsplash, you want to make sure you select the object. Okay, you select the frame that you want that picture to apply to, and let me just type in, let's search for, let's just say food or anything. Okay, let's just say vacation. Let's just type in vacation, and let's just have some pictures here. I'm looking for, I think I'm just going to use a random picture there. So let's take this one for instance. So now we have this picture right inside this frame. Okay, but let's assume okay, great. Let me go ahead and close this. Now we have this picture inside this frame. Now let's assume I want to type in a caption here, right? Let's put in Peru. I don't really know where this is, but let's put in Peru here, and let me go ahead and make this quite large. Let's say 32. Okay, so let's say I just want to put this Peru right here. You can see that it's almost invisible, right? It's not very legible. So what you can actually do is to come in here and select the shape you have. Okay, and then under fill, you can see you have your background, you have your image. You can now click on this plus sign to add a new fill. Okay, so we can go ahead and choose a color, maybe somewhere around this background now. Okay, now you can see after selecting this color, I'm unable to see the image. That is why right here my fill has gone back to 100, right? So to add this overlay effect, color overlay effect, all I need to do is to come in here and reduce the transparency. Okay, you can now see that I've created something better, but ideally you want to go ahead and use gradient. Okay, ideally you want to use gradient so that on this other part, this particular part here, that's this for this one. Okay, for this one at the top, you want to make the transparency very visible, while this one at the bottom you want to make it somewhere there. Okay, what you can do is to even reduce this. Sorry, I can also drag this just this way. Okay, and just make sure it's okay here. So now we've added this, and here right here, if you make this 100%, you can actually view what we've done clearly. Okay, so you can come back here and select the second one and reduce the opacity. Right, good. So that's one of the use cases of this transparency here. You can use the fill transparency to actually reduce the color of that particular selection you've chosen. Okay, so I'm just going to put this by the way. Oops, I'm just select the two of them. Let me just drop them here. So next we are going to take a look at applying gradients. So I'm just going to, let me call this one fill transparency and blending mode. Okay, so that's what we have here there. Let's also go ahead, pick another frame. Let me just get my desktop size. I think I would have just gotten desktop size right there. So desktop size, let's call this one gradients. So I know we've already done a class and we talked about gradient, but I just feel like sometimes when we keep repeating this thing and you keep practicing it, you get better at it. So basically, how do you apply gradient? So if I have a shape here, okay, I can draw shape and I can go ahead and add a color to this. So, normally we can go to fill and then add our color. But here is the thing. If you want to apply gradients to this, all you need to do is to move to this particular tool here, the gradient tool. Now the gradient tool gives you these two stops. All you need to do is to, add the colors you want. You can add it directly from here and you can actually add more stops, right? But here is the thing. If you're adding your gradient, if it's a button, depending on what you're trying to apply gradients to, you can actually, choose different types of direction. So for this, I'm just going to push this somewhere around here. Okay. And then for this one, I want to go this way. Okay. I want to go this way. Now for this particular one, that's this particular color here, I want to go ahead and select, see my pen dropper tool, I want to go ahead and select this color here. Then instead of 247, I just want to move maybe a little bit to this other side and make it 260 or 257. Let's go with 260. Now I have this lighter shade right here and the dark shade right here. So that's what you want to do. You just want to move a little bit or you want to make it a little bit darker. You don't want to go too far yet. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? So that's how you can achieve gradient fill in Figma. So let me deselect this now. Let me just add a little bit of corner radius right there. So let's duplicate again, Ctrl D. And another type of gradient you can create is more than two. Okay, you can have more than two stops. When you double click here, you are going to, when you double click here, you are going to have another stop. And with this stop, you can decide to add another color inside. Okay, so right now we can use this, and then this last one, we can even go further. Okay, so you can see we are beginning to create this kind of special effect with gradients. Okay, now gradients can come in different types. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate this again, Ctrl D. Now let's pick this and let's go back to gradient. Now we can also do what you call radial gradients. So we've been doing linear gradients, but you can also do radial gradients. So with radial gradients, you also want to go very dark and light with radial gradients, unlike the linear gradients. So if I'm doing radial gradients, I probably want to go ahead and make this one a little bit dark. Okay, so and this one I can go that light. Okay, let's come back, let's change the hue a little bit so you can actually understand what is going on. Now I can switch this position, because you always want, with radial gradients, you want the dark part to be on the outer side and then the light part on the center part. So you can do something like this, right? And you can see we have a different type of effect right here. If I even bring this dark one closer, so you can see we are beginning to get this type of effect. So that is for radial. So this is how you create your gradient. And don't forget, each of these colors still have this blending mode. So if you want to like blend the colors or do something else, you can start building from there. Okay, so basically that is how you create different types of gradients using Figma. Okay, and now let's talk about the next thing, and which is layer blur. So let's take a look at layer blur. So let's get another frame, and I'm just going to add this desktop, and I'm going to call this layer blur. So let me drop this here. Let's call this layer blur. Okay, now with layer blur, you basically want to blur your layer. So whatever layer you have, let's assume I have this layer right here. Let me go ahead and Ctrl D, and let's drop this here. Okay, let's drop that right there. With layer blur, you simply want to go to effect, click on the plus sign. Now once you click on the plus sign, it's going to give you this default drop shadow effect. But what you want to do is to click here and select layer blur, right? What this is going to do is to blur this layer. Now, if you look inside, you can see that the background is, this shape is already becoming blurry, okay? So what you want to do is to select it and come to this layer effect panel, click on the sun effect, that sun icon, and you can now decrease or increase the blur value. So if I go ahead and make this like 50, so you can see right now, let me zoom backward a little bit. You can see it's becoming very blurry. If I go ahead and make it 100, you can see what's going on right there. So that's how you make use of layer blur. Okay, that's the layer blur effect. Now, under this effect panel, you can actually add multiple effects, okay? And when you are done, you can actually save them as a style as well, but that's not what we're doing now. And you can hide that effect and also view that effect. You can hide it and also view it, and you can use this minus sign to delete it entirely. Now, what are the use cases of layer blur? Layer blur can be used in a lot of use cases, but the most popular ones is using it to create some kind of very advanced gradient effect, okay? The background effect for gradients. For instance, let me go ahead and then let's just give this sorry, let's select that that background instead, and let's give it this dark blue. Let's go ahead and give it dark blue, okay? Let me go ahead and make it dark blue. Now I'm just going to draw a circle. Let's draw a circle. An ellipse, pick the ellipse, draw a circle. Now I want to show you how to copy properties from one element to another. So you can right click, okay? Once you right click, you go to this copy and you want to say copy properties. So you copy the properties, select this one, and let's right click and click on what? Paste properties. So you see it has this property right here. So let me go ahead and delete this. Now you can see our circle has this gradient color and this ellipse, this layer effect added to it. Now what I can do is to go ahead and select it and even increase it to like 150. So I have it right here, and I can even go ahead and duplicate it. Duplicate. If I make that 2, okay, duplicate, put one here. And for this one, I might just want to go with one color. I might just want to go with one color right there. And maybe this one color could just be this. What should I use? Okay, I'm just trying to, okay, you can use this particular red here, okay? And now once you've done this, you can go ahead and also increase this. And now you can see, I think okay, you can see we are beginning to create this type of advanced gradient effects, right? So you can add as much shapes as you want and increase this as much as you want, okay? Depending on how you want, how smooth you want it to blend, right? So let me go with 1000 there. So you can see it's beginning to blend like this, and I can also put in another circle, Control D. For this one, I might want to reduce it to somewhere around 500. And I also want to change the color of this particular one to maybe something here. And I might just drop this one right here. Okay, now reduce this. The circle can be different shapes, okay? And then I have a background, and I can just pick my text to, and then maybe type in hello designer. Okay, hello designer. Okay, so we can just have something like that here. And let's go ahead and make this extra bold, and then let's increase it to something significantly large. And here we have it, hello designer. So basically that is how you use the layer blur effect. Remember, it's used to blur the particular layer you are selecting, the particular element on the layer you are selecting. Okay, so that is for layer blur. Next, we want to talk about shadows. Okay, I'm just going to click on this frame again, and I'm going to get my desktop right there, and let's take a look at shadows. So basically there are two ways to create a shadow. You can create shadow using the shadow effect, that's from this effect, or you can create shadows using shapes. Okay, now let's take a look at the two of them. So to create a shadow, all you need to do is to, let's go in here and draw a rectangle. So here is my rectangle, and let me just go ahead and give it some white color. Okay, white color. Okay, let me go with white first. Okay, let me just put this. Before then, let's give this a background color. For this background, let's go with something bluey, you know, blue but very light. Okay, let's go with something like this. Okay, great. Now let me go ahead and make this white so you can actually see the shadow. So shadows are basically used to give depth, right? So let's go ahead and make this 32, so it just looks better. So shadows are used to give depth to an element. So to add your shadow, all you need to do is to come in here and go to effect, click on that plus sign, then you have your shadow effect right there. But here's the thing, you can see this particular one looks very ugly. Now what you want to do with your shadow is to select it, go to shadow, and you have these 4 values here. You have the X value, the Y value, the blur, and the spread, as well as the color and transparency. Now the X value, we have 2 ways you can move with the X value. You can move left or right. Okay, so if I go ahead and make this 10 and click on this Y, you can see I've moved to the right hand side. If I make it minus, that's -10, I will move to the other side. Okay, meanwhile the y-axis is used to move up or down. So if I go ahead and make this 15, you can see I move down. If I go ahead and make it -15, so when I move minus, I move the opposite direction, that's upwards. So these are the values you should know. But now here's the thing, when you are applying drop shadow, most of the time you want to leave this as 0, except you actually want it to move to either the left or right direction. But a lot of the times you are going to use 0. Now here's the thing, whatever value you use for your Y or your X, just use double of it for your blur value, because the blur is going to make the whole shadow to have a soft edge. So if I should use, let's say I use something like 16 here. Okay, what I want to do is to come to my blur value and make it 32. So this is a good rule of thumb for your shadows. Now if you look at this shadow, you can see that it's spreading out. That's because our spread is set to 0. If you increase the spread to, let's say, 15 or 16 as well, you can see it spreads out the more. But most of the time, what most designers use this spread for is to actually contract the shadow so that it looks more like it's coming from under the shape. So for that, you obviously want to go minus instead. Let's take a look at -5. And now you can see it's beginning to go under the shadow. If you even go -16, you might not even see the shadow anymore, because right now it is right under the shadow. So basically this is how you create shadow. Now one thing that is important when creating shadow is to always consider your background color, because your background color is going to determine the color of that shadow, right? You want to mimic reality most of the time. So anytime you are creating a shadow, make sure the shadow is having some elements of the background color. So to give this color, all I need to do is to select this. So once I select this, I'll come in here, and for this color, I can just go ahead and pick my eyedropper tool and select the background. Okay, so once you select it, what you probably want to do is to reduce the brightness. Let's go with 75 so that it becomes a little bit dark. But right now, what you can see is that it is having a subtle color there that has that blue inside. If you select this background now and go to the effect, you can see 224. So if you also select this and then go back to the shadow, you can actually see that we have that 225-ish right there. Okay, what you can now do is to make the color a little bit more soft by reducing the transparency right here to make it more soft, edgy. Okay, so basically this is how you want to create your shadow. Remember, like I said, once you are creating your shadow, you want to make sure whatever value you have here is the double of it is what you're going to have right here. Now in some cases it might not be the same thing. You might want to make the blur very large. It all depends on the kind of shadow you are creating. If you are creating a kind of product category grid, you want to use smaller shadows, right? But if it is just on a screen with one particular screen element, you might want to add a large shadow. We'll take a look at that later on. Now, how do you now add shadow with shapes? So let me duplicate this. Once I duplicate this, I can go ahead and remove this shadow. So another way to add shadow to this is to draw a shape. So let's draw a shape under here. Now, once you draw this shape, I want to go and make everything rounded. And I'm also going to use the same color here and make the brightness around 75. Okay, so I have something grayish there. And with this now, all you need to do is to come down to effect. Okay, come down to effect and choose our layer blur. Okay, you remember the layer blur, right? So layer blur, and on the layer value, I just want to go ahead and let's say 50. Okay, great. Now with 50, I can now move this closer to this. Now, once I'm here, I want to make sure I bring this one to the front. Right click, select, and bring to front. Okay, so now you can see we have this other type of shadow right here with shape. Okay, now the difference between this and this is that this particular one gives you more liberty to control the shape. Like right now, if I go ahead and change that color there to a gradient, I'm going to have a gradient shape. Okay, if I go here and choose two color, right, I'm going to have a gradient kind of shadow, but you don't want to do this most of the time. I'm just using it to show you example of what you can actually achieve when you have a shadow that is being controlled by shapes. But a lot of the time, most of your developers would prefer you use the normal shadows, because these ones can take a little bit of time to, program, because they are going to basically have to create a new div under that particular section. Okay, so here I want to select this, and I just want to go ahead and group them. So that's for shadows. So these are the two ways you can create shadow, but I would indulge you to always make sure you use these other shadow settings, right? So that it's easier for developers to just, impute it with their CSS. But if you're going for this style, you should be able to defend why you want to go for this style. It should be worth it. Okay. And the next type of shadow we want to look at is inner shadow. Okay, let's take a look at inner shadow. Let me still duplicate this, Ctrl D, and with inner shadows, let me go ahead and make this color. With inner shadows, let me just delete this, and let me zoom backward. Let me take in one of these our gradients, so we can actually see what's going on. Now with inner shadows, let me reduce this and then just put this somewhere around here. And let me rotate this. Let me rotate them. And let me have this way instead. Let me just have it this way instead. Okay. Now, with inner shadows, you're basically dealing with shadows that are going to be inside that shape. So you go to Effect, you click on the plus sign, and you want to go from shadow to inner shadow. Okay, so you want to go to inner shadow, and then once you zoom in, you can begin to see the inner shadow effect right here. If you click on this sun icon, you can now go ahead and manipulate the inner shadows. Okay, so if I come here, I can now type in maybe 16. So you see that effect right there, and I can decide to maybe make this one 0, and let's say 16, so it's on both ends from the top. And then this blur, you can just make it 32. Okay, so you can see you have this kind of effect right here. Now if you want to do it the other way around, okay, let me duplicate this. If you want to do it the other way, you come back here, and instead of 16, you can go -16, and also -16 on the Y to take it to the bottom part, right? So here you have this going on. But here's another thing. With inner shadows, you want to also make sure your color is very close to whatever color you have inside the card. You don't just want to go ahead and leave it dark, right? So if I click on this color, I can select this eyedropper tool. I want to come and click somewhere here so that it can have a color that is inside the card. Then I can now make this dark. Okay, you just have to use your eyes to choose a sweet spot for it. Okay, so that's what we have there. Let me come back to this one. It just looks better when you have it having an element of the colors you have inside. Okay, so let's drag it down, and we have a sweet spot right there. Now sometimes when you mix these inner shadows, you can actually create a very nice effect. So let me go ahead and duplicate this, and then let's add another extra inner shadow. So let's go ahead and click that plus sign. Now once I click this, I go back to inner shadow, But this time around, since I have minus here, I just want to go ahead and have plus there. So 16 and 16 and 32. But what I want to do with this particular one is I want to add a shine to it. Okay, so if I select this, I'll just go pure white. Now this is what's happening. If you have this here on 100%, you can see what you have right there. Instead, what you just want to do is to reduce it, so it gives you that little shine or little pop right there. Okay, so you can see the kind of effect, this kind of plasticky effect or glossy effect. You can actually create them using the inner shadow effect. Now in a later class, we're actually going to be seeing how to, mix these effects together to create something more realistic. Okay, and the last thing we'll take a look at, so we've talked about the shadows, we've talked about the inner shadow, we've talked about the background, the layer blur. The next one I want to take a look at is the background blur. So this particular effect, Control D, let me duplicate this. Now let me bring it to the front, Remember, you right click and then you select bring to front. Now this particular effect is used to add a background blur effect. So basically what it's going to do is, if you apply a background blur effect to this, it's basically going to make everything behind it blur, right? So how do you achieve that? You can delete, we can set to delete this for now. So let's go ahead and click on the plus sign, and instead of drop down shadow, we want to have background blur. So this is how it works. You have to reduce the opacity of this particular shape. So since I have white, I want to go ahead and make it somewhere around 10. Okay, so I just want us to be able to see. You can see that blur effect already. Okay, but what you can also do is to go ahead and increase it maybe to around 15. Now you can see this blur effect more clearly right now. So if you really want to see the the shape itself, you can go ahead and select this and give it an outline, a stroke. And this stroke, let's go ahead and add white to it, so we can actually see what is going on here. You can see that anywhere I drop this is basically going to interact with them and make everything behind it blurry. So these are actually powerful effects that you can use in your design. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and test out some of these effects, and just try applying them to shapes and see how they interact. In the next class, we are going to actually create some things of what we've learned so far. So see you in the next class.